I now recognize the sponsor of the legislation, Ms. Norton, myself, to explain the bill. I want to thank Chair Maloney for marking up my District of Columbia Home Rule Expansion Act of 2022, which would expand the DC's authority to govern purely local matters. Specifically, this bill would give DC the authority to prosecute all DC crimes, giving DC the authority to grant clemency for DC crimes and eliminate the congressional review period for DC legislation. DC should and will be a state. However, until Congress grants DC statehood, there is no constitutional or policy reason Congress should not pass this bill. States are not the only entities that have the three authorities this bill would give DC. The territories, such as Guam and Puerto Rico, have these authorities too. Under the Constitution, Congress has plenary authority over both DC and the territories. Congress has chosen not to require a congressional review period for territorial legislation and has chosen to give territories the authority to prosecute and grant clemency to all crimes under their respective laws. Congress can choose to give DC these authorities too. First, this bill would give DC the authority to prosecute all DC crimes. While Congress has given DC authority to enact criminal laws, it has only given DC the authority to prosecute some DC crimes. Congress should give DC the authority to prosecute all DC crimes. Currently, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia has the authority to prosecute most DC crimes committed by adults and some by juveniles, and the DC Attorney General has the authority to prosecute most DC crimes committed by juveniles and some by adults. This bill would not only make the person with the authority to prosecute all DC crimes accountable to DC residents, it would save the federal government tens of millions of dollars annually by reducing the number of individuals working in the DC Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia. Second, this bill would give DC the authority to grant clemency for all DC crimes, as Congress previously has done. Currently, the President exercises the authority to grant clemency for DC crimes, though almost never does. DC residents deserve a say in whether their fellow residents deserve mercy. Finally, this bill would eliminate the congressional review period for DC legislation. DC legislation takes effect after a congressional review period unless a joint resolution of disapproval is enacted into law during the period. The congressional review period imposes significant costs on both DC and Congress, but only 3 disapproval resolutions have been enacted since passage of the DC Home Rule Act in 1973, and none since 1991, more than 30 years ago. Yet, the DC Council has to use a Kafkaesque legislative process to comply with the review process, often having to pass the same bill in 3 different forms: emergency, temporary, and permanent, using different legislative procedures for each form. Even without the review period, Congress would retain its congressional authority to legislate on any DC matter at any time. I would like to close by noting that there are some Republicans in Congress who have recently called for repealing the Home Rule Act and returning to the days when Congress was DC's sole legislature. This will not happen on my watch. I urge my colleagues to support this bill, and I yield back my time.